Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. I'm George calling with Scratch Golf Tips, and today we're going to be looking at Jon Rahm's golf swing. We're going to do a little swing analysis of Rahmbo. Now, as many of you know, Rahm doesn't necessarily have a very teachable golf swing. There are certainly things about it that can be teachable, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So today we're going to be looking at this swing video of Jon Rahm back in March of 2022 at the 2022 Arnold Palmer Invitational. This is a 6-iron off the tee of the one of the par 3s on the front 9. Now, one thing that I think is important to look at in a swing analysis, aside from the swing itself, is the pre-shot routine. You see Rahmbo walks in with one hand on the club, does one little half waggle at the ball, and then one smaller waggle, called a quarter waggle. He pauses over the ball and then commits to the ball. Now let's take a look at the swing a little closer up in real time. You can see the tempo of Rahm's swing is a little bit faster than what we normally see on tour. Now, generally when I'm looking at professional golf swings, and especially swings that you want to recommend for people that are teachable swings, you want to go with those slightly slower tempos. I'm not talking as slow as someone like Sung Jae Im, but Collin Morikawa, Xander Schauffele, Max Homa, those are guys who have a very slow and deliberate takeaway. That's not something that Rahm has, but that doesn't mean that what Rahm does is wrong. Obviously, he doesn't need me to say that. He's had a lot of success on tour, but if you have a shorter backswing, it's kind of tricky to have a really slow, deliberate takeaway. Like I said earlier, Morikawa, Schauffele, they have those slow, deliberate takeaways, but they have that longer golf swing. So if you're going to shorten up the golf swing like Rahm does here, and we'll talk a little bit about his backswing length later on in the video, but having that short tempo or having that quick tempo is no problem. Another guy who has it is Matt Fitzpatrick, a little bit of a shorter swing and a very fast backswing. And there really isn't a problem with that. I will say there can be a lot more opportunity for inconsistency in the backswing. So if you are going to have that shorter backswing, that quicker tempo, practice, and get it right. Now let's slow this swing down just a little bit. You can see how short that backswing is. You can also notice in this video, look at his hips, look at the belt buckle. There is such little rotation. Look at the top of the backswing. Those hands do not get very high, and there's a very small amount of rotation in those hips. Now luckily, Jon Rahm is a big, strong, powerful guy. He swings the club efficiently. So he doesn't need a really wide turn. He doesn't need his hands to be high. He doesn't need any of that. But when using these fundamentals in your own swing, if you're also 6'4", 220 or whatever Jon Rahm is, you can maybe get away with it. But if you're 5'10" and you don't have as much strength as a guy like Jon Rahm does, then it will certainly behoove you to get those hips rotated back a little bit more. I'm going to put Justin Thomas's swing, or his positioning at the top of the swing, on screen and compare them to Rahm. Justin Thomas, he works out, fairly strong guy, but not nearly as big of a build as Jon Rahm. He relies on those high hands, and he relies on that belt buckle turning a little bit more away from the target, if you will, in the backswing. Another very interesting thing about Jon Rahm's swing that we see is the loading of the lead wrist. Because of the positioning of his wrist at the top of the backswing through transition, he can actually store and create a ton of power through the ball. A lot of people who have analyzed Jon Rahm's swing talk about how he doesn't have or utilize very much lower body strength, but he uses so much upper body strength, as shown by his power and his lack of hip turn. If you have a lot of power and you can hit the ball like Jon Rahm does, but you don't have any hip turn, that power has to be coming from somewhere, and for Rahm, it comes from the upper body rotation, the loading of the lead wrist, and just big boy strength. I took this video when I was at the Arnold Palmer, and just watching him walk by, you can't really appreciate it on TV. He's a big, strong man. So he can get away with these things because he has that natural strength. Now, in terms of teachability from this swing, leading the load wrist, I don't think that should be on the mind of your average 20 handicapper. That's a tough move, and it's something that Rahm can pull off because Rahm practices more than almost any other non-professional golfer, right? But a few things that we can take away is the turning of the hips. You don't have to turn your belt buckle all the way around. If you have a little bit of upper body strength, then you don't really need. You can lean on that upper body strength like Rahm does. You don't need to be rotating in every which way, especially if that leads to you feeling disoriented through transition and not making solid strikes at the ball. Additionally, the short backswing of Rahm is absolutely something that a lot of golfers could benefit from. A guy like Tony Finau, who has a ton of flexibility and could take the club really far back but was inaccurate doing so, shortened up his swing, maybe took a few yards off but increased his accuracy. If that sounds like something that you could benefit with, absolutely try it next time you're practicing on the range. Film your swing, try and shorten it up a little bit. Now, Jon Rahm has club foot. He was born with a little bit of deformation in one of his feet, so he actually lacks flexibility, so he cannot take the club back that far. That's just the way that his body was built, but we can still learn from that for all those golfers who may be spraying the ball a little bit too far. Maybe you're not getting a good shot dispersion on your club face, you're not making consistent contact with the ball. Shorten up that swing, focus on making solid contact. Even if you're taking a few yards off, solid contact is always king. So from his tempo to his short backswing, little rotation of the hips, and bowed wrist, there's so much to really look at and inquire about and analyze in the swing of Jon Rahm. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Rahm's swing. Leave them in the comment section below. I'd be happy to read and reply to any of the comments on this video. As always, thank you all very much for tuning in. If you want to see any other swing analysis, leave them in the comment section down below, and I will see you in the next video. Play well, and take care.